Good morning, everyone. How's everybody doing today? Good? Fantastic. All right, everybody looks very nice today. We have the Q&R because it is the last Sunday of the month. So if you would like, you can submit your questions to us somehow. How do we? Online? Online, okay. So you can submit them. I think there's a place to do it. Otherwise, you can email us. We'll get them, and we try to answer them the best that we can. I think this one too, huh? Oh, wrong one. Sorry, there's kind of an echo. So, oh yeah, all right. Okay, all right. So this week, the questions were kind of challenging, at least for me anyway, which is good, you know. It's great to have something that keeps things interesting and, not that I don't enjoy answering, the same questions over and over again, because it helps me kind of like build and then also kind of see the difference in my answer as the years go on. So we get people who come, from different schools and colleges, high schools, and so they ask a lot of, similar questions. And so I've kind of built up this repertoire of like answers in my head. So if someone asks me something, then I can kind of, without even thinking about it, say something. But occasionally we'll get questions that I've never really thought about before or haven't had to answer in this setting before, and so it's wonderful for me to be able to have this opportunity. So I wanted to start with maybe the most challenging for me, and hopefully I get this right, but you ask 7 ministers a question, you'll get 8 answers, so I'm sure you could get something else from someone from a different minister, but I'll give my appreciation for it. So this question is, does Buddhism have guidance for us in understanding why some people are born with disabilities, and in parentheses, mental or physical, that create such great challenges for the person and the families? Does Buddhism have guidance for us in understanding why some people are born with disabilities, mental or physical, that create such a great challenges for the person and the families? So this is a really good question. And within the Buddhist context, there is what a lot of people kind of see as the sort of like scales of justice in the concept of karma. So karma is essentially at the very heart of it just the law of cause and effect, that for every cause that there is an effect. Now, depending on the different schools of Buddhism, supposedly there's good karma and there's bad karma, and so if you do a lot of good in one life and another life, you'll reap that benefit, because not all karma is realized immediately. Depending on what it is, it can affect you, many, many years or even many, many lives later. So that's one way of understanding it. However, in my appreciation of this idea of, or this concept of karma, is that it's not so much that it's good or bad, but rather, skillful or unskillful. So when we think of good and bad, there's this sort of moral judgment that we place upon it, but this morality is a creation of our human minds. So we decide in our minds what's good or bad, and that doesn't reflect the true reality of how things are. How's it going so far? That's a good concept? Okay, all right. So from that, in understanding karma in that way, there isn't really a reason, why people are born a certain way or you're born to a certain family. As a previous bishop of the BCA had said, we don't get to pick our parents, right? You're born to whoever. And in the same way, and his mom said to him, we don't get to pick our kids either. So... So this kind of sense where, like with karma, you don't exactly get a lot of choice of who you get born to, where you get born, the circumstances of that stuff. It just kind of, you're given this hand that you're dealt, and so you have to play with it. Now, understanding that and sort of the reasoning behind it, once you do have that hand, then traditionally Buddhism would teach us that it's up to all of us and how we understand our situation to change it from being one that's perhaps difficult or challenging or bad to one that is good or like full of opportunities. So there's a parable within Buddhism, that of the 2 arrows. And so there's this idea that when something happens to us that pains us, there's 2 arrows. There's one arrow, the one that initially hurts us, and the other one, which is our reaction to it. So we can't control everything that happens in our lives. Again, this idea of karma, of causes and conditions, but we can control our reaction to it. And so if we can change that reaction to one that it can be not so negative, perhaps, then it allows us to lessen our suffering, to live a happier life, because the things that pain us don't bring us double the pain. Like you're already hurt by it. Why would you allow it to hurt you even more? Now, moving to more of perhaps Jodo Shinshu understanding of this is that within Jodo Shinshu, we're always trying to move away from a self-centered way of thinking to an other-centric or Buddha-centric way of thinking. So this placing emphasis in our lives on others, on wisdom and compassion, rather than ourselves. And so being able to flip it in that way, it changes our outlook in life and how we see things, and in that way, it allows us to deal with difficulties that we have. So one of the famous people that is used as an example with this situation is somebody named Hisako Nakamura. So she's very famous within the Shin Buddhist circles in Japan. She was someone who, during childhood, so she was born actually in 1897. She passed away in 1968. And so she was infected. She had an infection caused by frostbite when she was 3 years old. So because of that, she lost both of her hands and her feet. So from the age of 3, she had no hands or feet. And as an adult, she was featured in these sideshow exhibitions, but she taught herself how to do needlework, how to do knitting on her own. And so later in her life, she became an accomplished and acknowledged calligraphist, a doll maker, and an author. And so her poems became very famous, again, within Shin Buddhism. So eventually in her life, she encountered the teachings of Shinran Shonin, and it transformed how she viewed her life. So I wanted to read to you a couple poems. So there's a book in English translated about her life and then her poems, and it's called Hands and Feet of the Heart. So if you would like to learn more, you could probably do like a whole lecture on this. But anyway, I encourage anyone who's interested to find this book. I have it on Kindle, so you can get it that way. But anyway, so this poem that she wrote is called Though Without Hands or Feet. So, oh, sorry. I wanted to do a different one first. Of course, when I try to do this, then it doesn't work. That's how it goes. Okay, here we go. So this one was called I Have Them All. A refreshing autumn morning. Please hand me a towel. A husband who answers oi. A daughter who says hi. Brushing my teeth and then removing my false teeth to clean them further and washing my face. Though short and without fingers, my round and strong stump of an arm does everything for me. A limb without a bone, a soft arm, a short hand. I have them, I have them, I have them all. It's all I need. What a refreshing autumn morning. So this kind of understanding of like, she has everything that she needs. She doesn't feel like she's somehow lacking in her life because of her situation. And so this is one way of understanding that kind of first concept that I was saying of changing your mindset. So now this other poem is kind of more on the Shin Buddhist side. So this one, Though Without Hands or Feet. Though without hands or feet, the life that is allowed to live, how precious. Because I am without hands and without feet, I am enveloped in the Buddha's compassionate sleeves. How peaceful I am. Although unable to repress the wrath in my heart, the Buddha accepts me just as I am. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. After a moment of irritability, I reflect and prostrate myself in repentance before the Buddha. What should I do about my selfish desires? I can only leave them in the hands of the Buddha. The white chrysanthemums I offer the Buddha, its pure scent remains as I chant the morning sutra. The cheapest of rice gruel allows me to live. The worship brings such happiness. The karma which the mother bears and the karma which she forces her daughters to bear, all are borne by the Buddha. So I must do my part by living to the fullest today. 60 years without hands or feet, only because the Buddha's compassionate hands and feet have taken the place of mine. So this is more of this, kind of moving away from this self-centered living. And so she recognizes the imperfections within her, right? It's not that she's never having bad thoughts again, or she's never selfish, or she's never concerned about like, oh, my life is tough, right? She absolutely still has those feelings. However, because of the teaching, because of her awareness of the wisdom and compassion around her, she can live in such a way that she tries to live the fullest. So she talks about this, in the book of how it's important for us not to take for granted the life that we do have, the opportunities that we do have. And because of her outlook in life, she's able to live more full and more happy than if she was to constantly be, bitter and negative all the time. Now, moving to the aspect of this question where it has challenges for the person, it also has challenges for the family. And so I hope with this talk, I'm not diminishing the challenges that people have who are disabled or people who have disabled family members, because it is hard, right? It is difficult. But again, it's shifting the mindset of why is it hard, what is normal, these kind of questions that challenge our conventional thinking. But for the families, one thing that was interesting to me to hear, and I really regret not being able to remember who told me this, but is everyone familiar with the concept of dana, the paramita, the perfection of dana, of selfless giving? Yeah, okay, so this is one of the practices within Buddhism of we try to reach this perfection of completely selfless giving, and so that's something, on the way within the Mahayana path of Buddhism. But it was told to me that it's also dana to receive. So if someone does something for you, it's dana to receive. So I think an illustration of this would be like, how a lot of times, at least in Asian culture, when someone gives you, or if you give something to someone and then you say, oh, no, it's nothing, like don't worry about it. You never say like, you're welcome, And so it's this idea of like, it's important to say you're welcome because then you acknowledge what the other person is doing for you or what you've done for the other person. Anyway, so this idea of receiving as dana is also important because when you give something, if you have no one to receive it, then you can't practice it, right? Essentially, right? The definition of giving is someone has to receive it. If there's no one to receive, then you can't give anything. And so it's important for someone to be able to receive. Now, on the flip side of that, when we give, a lot of times we feel like, oh, they should be thankful to me, but when we understand it in this kind of different way, then we can be thankful that there's someone that we have something to do for. I kind of made a mental leap there. Did I got you? All right. So it's important for us to recognize that someone is there to receive the compassion that we want to give. If there is no one there, then we're kind of left, high and dry, and it's like, oh, I have all this compassion to give, and no one will take it from me. I don't know if anyone has ever felt that way. But that is important, that there is that dynamic between two people. So as a family member of someone who needs perhaps more help, then it's this opportunity for you to practice that kind of giving, to give that kind of compassion, and to recognize that, to see that without that opportunity, perhaps you wouldn't be able to care for someone, to be there for someone, to be important to that person. And without that, then your life would be different and maybe, even less meaningful. But you're allowed to learn, you're allowed to understand, you're allowed to grow because of this, supposedly challenging thing, this difficult thing. But it can be this opportunity for you to practice and learn and grow within this compassionate means in yourself. Okay. How was that? Good? All right. Any lingering questions or holes, or you gotta sit on it? Yeah, all right. Okay, you can tell me how you actually feel later. But this kind of leads me into the next question that I want to answer today. So this question is, these days we often hear about self-care and healthy boundaries. What is the Jodo Shinshu perspective on dealing with someone who is not respectful towards you or doesn't respect your boundaries? While trying to show the person empathy, and if you are triggered by the person, is it also consistent with Jodo Shinshu practice to limit your exposure to that person when you can? So, what is Jodo Shinshu perspective on dealing with someone who is not respectful to you, doesn't respect your boundaries? Is it consistent with Jodo Shinshu to limit your exposure to that person when you can? So that's the question. And kind of leading in from that last discussion, I forget again who taught this to me, but I'm sure a lot of people say this as well, is that everyone in our lives is a teacher. We can shift our mindset to seeing everyone as a reflection of truth, as a bodhisattva, as our sensei. Everyone around us, every interaction that we have is an opportunity for us to learn about ourselves, to learn about others, to learn about the world around us. And it's up to us to really open our eyes, open our ears, and open our hearts to receive that lesson. And so when someone is very challenging to us, perhaps doesn't respect us, is not respectful to us, does not respect our boundaries, and it's an opportunity for us to reflect upon ourselves and, on the other person. Thinking about the other person, putting ourselves in their shoes, why is it that they are acting in a certain way? What is it about them? And it's impossible for us to actually know, but if we can sort of get into that headspace, then allowing us to be a bit more understanding of them will help us to be, maybe not necessarily forgiving, but at least understanding of where they're coming from. Secondly, to reflect upon ourselves and see what it says about ourselves. Why is it what that person is doing is bothering us? Is it something in our past? Is it something about ourselves that bothers us? And maybe what we learn about ourselves is that we just have to stay away from that person. And that's, genuinely a good lesson to learn. But we have to learn it. We have to find within ourselves what it is that's best for us. So we have, again, this opportunity to learn. We have a teacher who, is teaching us through this sort of like expedient means or something. But they're teaching us in a way to learn about ourselves and what we have to do to have a more happy and fulfilled life. Whether it's being more understanding, whether it's being forgiving, whether it's being further away, whatever it is, we have to find that solution for us. So, in my opinion, it is consistent within Jodo Shinshu to distance ourselves away from people who are not respectful for us, but I think it's more than just saying like, yeah, don't be around them. It's important for us to reflect on why it's important for us not to be around them. And then it allows us to not just stick to it, but also have a deeper understanding of how we can interact with others in the future. Okay, how was that? That one was okay? That one was a little bit easier. And then, let's see, I don't know. You guys want one more? Yeah? Okay, all right. Yeah? All right. Okay, so this is the last one I will do, and someone had asked, what is the process of preparing for and undergoing Tokudo ordination like? What is the process of preparing for and undergoing Tokudo ordination like? So Tokudo ordination is the first level of ordination within our sect of Buddhism, the Nishi Honganji, Jodo Shinshu. So like there's Jodo Shinshu in Japan, and within Jodo Shinshu there are different sects. So there's other forms, and we have a specific one. And so our ordination is going to look different from other sects. And also, just over time, each individual, their Tokudo will look different from other people's. So for instance, how I went through Tokudo and how Rinban Yuki went through Tokudo is different, right? There's a lot of similarities, but it was different. The same thing with, Sensei Grace, Sensei Kelvin, and Sensei Keith. Like, there's probably very similar, but mine is going to be different from theirs. So there's sort of not an exact answer because it's going to be different for each person. They change it, every so often to adjust for different things and who's in charge. But there are these similarities. So I can speak to my own experience in preparing for it. And so mine was kind of different in the sense that we were, I believe, the last ones to do sort of like a hybrid. So traditionally it's done in Japan, but we did the first half here in America in the Jodo Shinshu Center, and then we flew over and we finished it out in Japan. So that was really hard. I don't recommend it, and I'm glad that they they changed it, that they're not doing that anymore. Either do it here or do it over there. But so preparing for it, it starts, I don't know, really, as just a regular temple member where you're learning how to chant and stuff. So there's these different, or at least when I did it, there's these different tests that you had to pass, and they all have to do with different ritual aspects. So essentially, when you go through Tokudo, you go through the ordination, the headquarters is saying that we say that you know exactly how to run a service. Like we taught you, and you have sort of like a license to, to do service. So there's these different things that they test you on to make sure that you know how to do them. So prepping for it, you have to learn all of these things. There's certain stuff that you have to memorize. At one point, I had all of Shoshinge memorized, which, I have most of it still. It's in my head. And then there's other things that you have to memorize as well. And so that's part of the preparation. There's also the ritual aspects of it, right? The right way to do Oshoko, the right way to go out into the Naijin, all these different things. So essentially, there's a uniform way, like a correct way of doing everything. So if you were to go to any given temple, you would be able to do it. Now, that being said, each temple is a little bit different, and they do things a little bit differently, so you'd have to adjust. But if you know the right way, then you can adjust, and you can know why you're adjusting, rather than like, this is just how we do it. But like, okay, I understand, like, all right, this is how we're supposed to do it, and this is why we're doing it differently. Anyway, now, that's the sort of prep, is learning, memorizing, doing all that stuff. Now, the actual going through it, it's what's kind of, I don't know, fondly is maybe too strong a word, but it's called like Buddhist boot camp, because we get put into this training facility, and we have to only bring the things that we need to do service, essentially. So we have attire like this. So like, as you can see, I have traditional Japanese undergarments, and so you're not allowed to have like Western clothing. You can't bring your sneakers in. All of that is contraband. You can't have like a radio, or you can't have magazines. You can't bring candy bars. Like, all that stuff is contraband. So you go in there and you eat what they give you, and the food is really good. The cooks and stuff, they make a lot of traditional Japanese food, but then they give you other stuff too. I remember in the second level of ordination, the leader of my group was really happy one day when we had coffee and bread, because we hadn't had that for like the whole week. Anyway, so we're there, and then like a typical day would be like, you wake up, you clean, you have service, you have breakfast, then you have lecture, then you have like practice, like lunch, more lecture, service, dinner, take a bath, and then practice for service like the next day. So it's kind of like you're either in lecture or you're doing service. And when you're not doing that, then you're eating. And when you're eating in silence, and you're eating as fast as you can, because during your downtime is when you are able to take your test. So just throughout the whole week, instructors will go during the downtime into different rooms, and so you have to go to these different rooms, and there's like a line of people who are trying to take the test, and so you go in, you sit down, you give them we had like a stamp card essentially for like the different tests that you have. You give that to them, and then you perform the test. They say, okay, go, and then you do it, and if you pass, then they give you a stamp, and if you don't, then they say, try again, and you have to leave and practice, and then come back another time. So all of us were eating, and then we're done, and then we go, and then we try to do the test. And so you have to get all of those before the end of it's like a 10-day period. And then you can go through the final Tokudo ordination ceremony, where you are then, formally ordained. And so most of the time, the Monshu, the head of our organization, is there, and sometimes, he's not, but that's the one who does this symbolic sort of shaving of your head. And so some people do get their heads buzzed, so I did that. And, some, women do it too, but it's kind of optional. And if you ever do it, you have to be careful for those like long kind of cloth openings for doors, like in Japan, because if you walk through them, then it'll just grab like your hand, whiplash or something. Anyway, okay, so where was I? Do I do the tests? There's the eating, and then so for us, there was like another level of sort of stress or like rushing because it was in Japan, so it was in Japanese. So we had people, these instructors who were helping us out, and they would translate what the instructors were saying, and then they would kind of whisper it to us, which was nice in a sense because, like I said, it's kind of like boot camp where we're doing shoshinge, and then we'll mess up, and the instructors will like yell at us, and they'll be like, "You're doing it wrong, start over," and so we have to start over again. And I felt really bad because the Japanese students, they had to like sit in seiza, like on their knees, but we're American, so we sat in chairs because if we did that, our legs would fall off. So they have to chant, and then they would start over again. And so they've been doing this for like over an hour, and the instructors are yelling, and so like, and then we have no idea what they're talking about. But then our translators in our ears would be like, "Oh, they're saying the tone was off." So it sounds really nice to us. We're like, "Oh, I feel really bad for these other people." Anyway, so there was that, and then also after like the lectures, we would kind of get the rundown afterwards of like what was going on. And so we were supposed, there's like a very strict schedule, and we're supposed to be at places, but we were always running late because it was like, okay, we have to stay behind, and then we have to go, and we have to change, and we have to gun, and then so everyone's like kind of waiting for us, and it's like just the worst feeling when you're the last ones into the like mess hall or the dining hall because you can't eat until everyone's there and they're all seated, and then we do the shokuzen no gasho, the like what you say before you eat, and so like everyone's just kind of like sitting there like glaring at you as you're walking to your chair. You sit down and eat. Anyway, okay, so let's see, the eating, the clean, I think that was it, right? And then we're not really supposed to like talk about like the ceremony of the tokudo because it's only for like people who have gone through it. But it's very, very moving, for myself, speaking personally. And so being there, it was very. It hit me really hard because it was sort of this culmination of everything, not only that I had been doing, but how everyone had been sort of supporting me. So I was very fortunate that my home temple, the Berkeley Buddhist Temple, they had really supported me through my education and through that process, both through their thoughts, and their love, but also financially. And so being able to have all that, I felt very fortunate. And then to be able to accomplish that, it moved me to tears to be able to follow through and all of that. And I think they appreciated it. No, I'm sure they appreciated it, but it was just kind of funny coming back because then after I was able to do that and I graduated, some people from Berkeley were like, "Oh, you followed through. You actually did it." And like so I guess some people didn't have as much faith, but that's fine. All right. Any other questions about Tokudo or anything? I suppose you wouldn't know what to ask, huh? But anyway. All right. So yes, those are the 3 questions that I wanted to answer today. The one about the disability, the boundaries, and then Tokudo. So again, if you have any questions, anything at all, it could be whatever you want, please submit them to us online in some way. We'll get them and then we'll answer them at the end of the month. Thank you. Please join me in Gasho. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu.